relatives and friends, as we begin our services, we ask that you please turn off all cell phones or electronic devices or place them in a silent mode.
I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and their warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage and, in the fullness of time, healing and peace. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding. From fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until, looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Death has stilled the heart of Barry Adler. We gather here this morning to share our sorrow, to thank God for the gift of his life, and to entrust Barry to the gentle stillness of eternity. In truth, the many precious sparks of an individual's life are contained within the flowing memories of all those who were touched by him. You each hold this precious man in your hearts and your minds in your own unique ways. Today, our hearts go out especially to Muriel, his beloved wife of 57 years. We think of Barry's son, Mark, and his wife, Dawn, and his son, Glenn, and his partner, Raphael. Barry was grandfather to Leon, Benjamin, and Jacob. He is, of course, also remembered today by his sister, Susan. And we bring to mind Barry's brother, Alan, who predeceased him. It has been said that teaching is as close as we can come to affecting eternity. For a teacher never really knows where their influence will stop. And as we come together to remember Barry and to honor his life and the legacy he leaves behind for so many who knew him and for so many whose lives will be touched by someone who knew him, we recognize the greatness inherent in all of the small acts of teaching, of mentorship, of kindness and presence, for which Barry will be forever remembered. As his family shared with Rabbi Frankel the other day, Barry loved his life. He loved his family and his friends, many of whom are lifelong friends, and he loved his job. As Muriel shared, Barry was never ever sorry he chose to go into education. He was revered by his staff. He hired a lot of people over the years. He treasured the opportunity to write reference letters and to give recommendations. And he was known for being able to see the person behind the resume, to just somehow know who could be a great teacher and with the right mentoring and what they might need from him to get there. Excuse me. And wherever he went, whether it was out to eat, just recently in medical rehab, or while traveling the world, Barry would inevitably run into someone who would exclaim, "Mr. Adler!" Be it a former student or parent of a student or someone he had mentored, and then they'd talk and reminisce for a while. Barry was a teacher's teacher, and there was no doubt that he was truly called to be an educator. It was in his heart and in his soul. And he was masterful at it. Throughout his career, he tried to make connections with every age group. He was an elementary and middle school principal. He taught high school students and was a high school vice principal. He was a college professor, and he was passionate about building a community within each school where he worked. But as his son Glenn shared, Barry's favorite part of his job was the opportunity it gave him to mentor young teachers. Barry was someone who saw potential in people, even when they didn't yet see it in themselves. He was able to envision something for them before they could envision it for themselves, and he helped mold generations of teachers into great educators and principals who would go on to inspire generations of students of their own. And Barry was also constantly evaluating people he would meet in terms of their ability to be a good teacher, and would then often share his assessment or critique with Muriel, whether it was of his doctors at his various appointments as they explained things to him, or his rabbis who were teaching adult education classes he attended. Personally, I can tell you that Barry was one of the first people to see potential in me just over 40 years ago, encouraging the search committee to hire me as McCourt Shalom's cantor at a very young age. And while being so present for those he worked with and mentored, Barry was also always there for his kids as a dad. He was, as Glenn shared, always the dad and the kind of person who would step up and volunteer when someone was needed. Whether it was coaching baseball or soccer within the South Jersey men's group, or when McCourt Shalom was looking for a new education chairperson, he was the dad who was always out on the front lawn with his kids throwing a ball around. The kind of dad who would rearrange his schedule to attend every game his boys played in. And he was there in difficult moments too. As Glenn shared, when I didn't do so well on a test or in a game, he would be there to remind me that there would be another opportunity to do better, and that there were more important things in life to focus on. And when Glenn was going through a rough spot during his college days, he shared that his dad was right there, driving the 2.5 hours to just come and be with him. Barry was a joker. He loved a good story, always with a splash of humor, even if his family had already heard the story over and over again, be it of Barry's childhood, his time in the Army, or as a teacher. Barry was also an avid reader. He loved history, having received his master's degree in the subject, and enjoyed watching and talking about sports. He tried hard to expose his kids to cultural events and new experiences, and they especially recalled going to see shows and plays in Philadelphia. Barry's daughter-in-law, Dawn, added, he was a phenomenal man. He was there to mentor me with resume help in my own professional life, and was simply an all-around great guy. The world really lost a beautiful person. Muriel, you and Barry were nearly inseparable throughout your 57 years of marriage, and much longer relationship, meeting when you were only 14 and Barry 16. You shared how in your first apartment, your furniture consisted of 2 beach chairs, a bedroom set, and a TV, since neither of you had started really working yet. But you also spoke about how those were really good years too, sharing them together and with people who would become your lifelong friends. Together, you raised a family and traveled the world to Israel, Scotland, Ireland, the Caribbean, Canada, Italy, France, and along the Black Sea on a cruise. You shared life together, the ups and downs, the celebrations and challenges, the really good times, and some of life's most difficult ones. And these last 6 months have been especially trying. Barry showed such tremendous grit, fighting hard to continue to do what he loved, even with the physical limitations of Parkinson's. And much to Muriel's dismay, he often refused to listen to what people would tell him he couldn't or shouldn't do, including walking up the steps with a basket full of clothes to help around the house. As Glenn shared, my mom is truly the unsung hero here. She transitioned into a caregiver, giving our dad the care and attention that he needed. Muriel, just as you shared that Barry was always there for you and your family, you were there for him, surrounding him with love and making sure he had everything he needed to enjoy the time he had left. Muriel, you said that you not only lost your husband, you also lost your best friend. Our tradition teaches, though, that while our relationship with those who die may change without their physical presence with us, the love and the connection we share with them continues on in the tender and more gentler world of spirit and memory. In that way, those who die are always with us whenever we think of them, whenever we feel their presence in our hearts, whenever we catch a glimpse of their legacy in us or in the world. What made Barry a great teacher was not simply the information he imparted, but how he helped others to believe in themselves. The way he was fully present for those he taught, mentored, and worked with. It is what also, and perhaps even more importantly, made him a loving husband and caring father. He knew what really mattered in life. He showed up. He was there for you and with you. It's the kind of legacy that affects eternity, because it leaves so many people better off for having had him in their lives. And Barry has left our world better off for having lived in it. At this time, I'd like to invite Glenn up to share his thoughts.
Bear with me for a little bit. My dad was the public speaker in the family. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to talk about some of his early life and some aside of him that maybe some of you may not have seen before. And then I will talk about what he was like as a father. Like, if I can, maybe even splash in a little bit of humor, because he always liked a good story. Dad was born in January 1941 in Newark, New Jersey, to Louis and Shirley Adler. His twin brother and sister were born 5.5 years later. They also had a very strong presence in their family, with their Aunt Sylvia living with them. Both Alan and Barry were practical jokers in those years, often poking fun at their favorite targets, Aunt Susan and their father, Louis. And believe me, myself, my cousin Bruce, Lisa, and my brother Mark listened to those stories over and over again at Thanksgiving, Rosh Hashanah, Passover, or any other family event we might have had. He also had nicknames for everybody in the family. His brother Alan was Booge, he was Beal, and Sylvia was Silly Booge. His mother was Mama Mecca. His father had two nicknames, Papa Pecker and La Shalom. We'll keep some of the other names out for now. As a kid, he loved playing sports in the neighborhood. He's from the Weequahic section of Newark, and he loved going to the schoolyard, playing baseball, basketball, football. He had a passion for the New York Yankees. His favorite players were Mickey Mantle and Elston Howard, the first African-American Yankee. At this time, as Cantor mentioned, he actually developed a love of reading. His two favorite stories were of Tom Swift and the Hardy Boys, and he was an avid reader throughout his life. I believe he used to read at times 3 and 4 books a month. Interestingly, I'll tell you a short story. I was at the hospital with him maybe about 3 weeks ago. He was in and out of being lucid, and I told him I was reading a book, not a particularly famous book, by David Baldacci, kind of a mystery book, maybe 5 or 6 years old. He went on to tell me what the plot of the book was. It was an absolutely, at his level of how lucid he had been, was very was poignant at that time. During high school, he met my mom at a swim club while he was playing ping pong. And obviously they were inseparable for many years, 66 years, I believe. He attended Weequahic High School in Newark. From what I could tell at that time, he was just an average student. As he tells it, he went to the guidance counselor one day for career counseling. And the guidance counselor suggested he become a farmer. Anybody who's ever seen him plant tomatoes or cucumbers or plant flowers knows that was not such a good idea. At his father's urging, his father, I believe, was a Mason. He joined a youth group known as the DeMolay Youth Fraternity. That's my recollection. I know he bonded with his brothers, and rumor has it, at an event down the shore one time, he snuck out of his hotel room and met up with my mom from the sister sorority who was staying in another hotel room. After high school, he went on to Rutgers, Newark, earning a history degree, and then on to Rutgers in New Brunswick, earning both a master's in history and a master's in, I'll say, education, something like that. Throughout his life, he always had a strong affinity for Rutgers. Always wearing that Rutgers sweatshirt, always talking about Rutgers. During his Rutgers years, he was a member of the Teak fraternity, and I don't remember what Teak, he always referred to it as Teak. What I understand, he loved playing football with his fraternity brothers, and also drinking beer with them, which is kind of strange for me because I'll tell a little story later. He very rarely drank beer, but I saw him once or twice. Then the Vietnam era came along. He joined the Army Reserves and was based out of Fort Dix. After one interview with him, the Army supervisors determined that he would be best positioned as a supply clerk. And he did have to raise his weapon one time while in the Army. He was on night patrol, patrolling the perimeter of the base, and there was a mysterious car parked in a wooded area. In conjunction with his training, he walked up to the car, knocked on the door, raised his rifle, and shouted, "Halt, advance to be recognized." The car door opened, and two 17-year-old topless boy and girl came out of the car. Needless to say, that was the only time he ever raised his weapon. Dad and Mom got married in June 7th, 1964. As Karen mentioned, they had little money and they had beach chairs in their living room. That summer, he took a job at the Far Hills Inn as a salad person. He devised a plan where he could get those salads out to everybody. That was his job. He and my mom started teaching in Bound Brook, New Jersey. Dad taught history at the high school. Mom taught at an elementary school. And I'll tell you a little story about a friendship that he developed 55 years ago. And one summer, my dad and a young history teacher, he was a young history teacher, and another young teacher, biology teacher, Tony Cost, found themselves on the Bound Brook maintenance crew. Their job was to paint the football bleachers. At lunchtime, the maintenance crew would go out and I believe Uncle Tony told me the other day to a place called Capano's, which was a local watering hole. And they'd have a little bit too much to drink, and they'd go back and finish painting the bleachers. For those of you who know Tony and my dad, that kind of seems like an odd thing they'd be doing. They were kind of straight kind of people. Years later, as I was in high school, and we had moved up to Cherry Hill. As I mentioned, my dad I very rarely saw him drink. The only time I would ever see him drinking a beer, we'd go out, it was always on a hot summer day. And Tony and my dad would be sitting out on the back patio drinking a beer together. Obviously talking about Cherry Hill education, but also probably reminiscing about those days painting the bleachers back in Downbrook. In 1976, he moved up to Cherry Hill, moved the family up to Cherry Hill. There'll be some other people who talk about some of his experiences here in Cherry Hill. What I will talk about is what Dad was like as a father and as a grandfather. One of my earliest memories of Dad was going to the zoo and had him making faces at a camel. The camel wasn't so pleased with this and spit at Dad. We spoke of this and laughed about this for the next 40 years, at least. As Cannon mentioned, and I mentioned when I spoke earlier, he was Dad always on the street having a baseball catch or shooting hoops or throwing a football with Mark or I. Or later, and playing run the bases with our cousins. He had a baseball glove, and this is the glove he used throughout his life. It was a 1951 Stan Usual 4-finger model. We recently had it framed, and it's in his living room. It's a family heirloom, we consider it. We were the family that always ate dinner together at 6 o'clock, always without fail. As Ken mentioned, going through a rough patch, he was the dad who would provide the support, driving up to college to talk to me and work out our problems. Getting a call at 2:30 in the morning from my brother or I, and dropping everything out of bed and going to help us out. He was the dad at the sporting events, not just when I was in high school and getting a lot of playing time. He was the dad who would drive 2.5 hours to my college games and watch me sit on a bench. Because he said that was just as important. He was the one that, when I was with him, I felt safe. From the time I was 3 months old or 2 months old to 3 days ago when he couldn't move. He loved to travel, and over the last 25 years, he and my mom, along with their traveling companions, Ed and Judy Stein, went all over the United States and Europe. Loved telling stories. As a grandfather, he loved watching the boys do their activities. And with me, it was mostly sports, but with them, it was piano, it was acting, it was a little bit, wider, a little bit wider. And he loved telling people about their things and their activities. Birthdays and vacations. He was there with the family, telling stories, enjoying spending time with the boys. My sons, Leon, who was born in 1999, Ben in 2002, and Jacob in 2008. Now they are, two of them are adults, and one's close to entering high school. Every year, Mom and Dad would take the three boys as a tradition to go for backpacks before school started. They made a tradition of this, and they make a day of it, and they go from store to store looking for the perfect backpack for that year. I remember one year, Jacob's a little bit younger than the other boys. He wanted the same backpack as them, and the backpack was bigger than he was. And I remember him carrying that around all year. To illustrate what kind of family member to some of this extended family, I'm going to read a quote, and I couldn't do it justice with my own words. This is from one of our cousins, Jay Gann, and here's what Jay had to say about my dad. "Your dad was so nice to me. You have no idea. After my father died, your mom and dad had me and my mother come and stay with you all. Not sure if you remember, but he was a blast. I'm really going to miss your dad. He was one of a kind, and he was a definition of kind." And also, from one of his former students also sent me a message, or I received. I'd like to read that as well, because again, I can't do justice to the way he would build relationships with people. This is from a student he had in, I didn't even mention, Bridgewater, New Jersey, which he taught for several years. Let me read this to you. "When people ask me who was my favorite teacher, I always answer Barry Adler. I first took Honors History 1 as a junior in 1973, and then International Relations in 1974. The history class was a journey. Mr. Adler had a sharp mind, a sharp tongue, and he put everyone on notice to be prepared to have intelligent contributions to class discussions. He challenged us to have well thought out reasons for our opinions. At first, a little intimidating, but then a lot of fun and an intellectual workout that really helped my critical thinking skills. The International Relations class was one of the most incredible experiences I've had as a student. Mr. Adler was able to convince, persuade, and coerce the school administrators to have a class with 5 or 6 people. It was more like a seminar. He brought in a coffee maker, and we'd sit and discuss and drink coffee. I remember that we had us work on an international simulation game that played out the causes of the Korean War. Just very cool approach to teaching, and no one ever came close to it. But more than the teaching, he really wanted to connect with us as individuals. He invited us over to his house for dinner on a few occasions where we met his family. A very special and unique relationship with a teacher that I can't remember having throughout my life as a student. I last spoke to Mr. Adler 2 or 3 years ago. Same sharp mind and sharp tongue that I came to enjoy, and that helped shape my thinking and perspectives. I'd never heard of this person, Philip Kemelor, but obviously he had my dad had a profound impact on him. I'd like to end with one additional quote that I received. This is from a friend of mine, and I see him sitting out there. And this kind of reaffirms some of the things that Cantor was saying. Interestingly, I was friends with him in high school. My dad hired him, I believe first as a student teacher and then later as a teacher. He's gone on to teach in Cherry Hill for 25 years. And my dad mentored him, and he then mentored my son as a basketball coach. I'd like to read what David wrote to me. He did what great educators do. He gave individuals confidence, affirmed people, and believed in them. All a young teacher needs is someone to believe in him. It makes him believe in himself more. I and many others are indebted to your dad. He affected eternity with the students and teachers he impacted. His influence can't be measured. He really influenced me. Great man, I speak of him often. My dad will surely be missed. It will be difficult going on without him. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Glenn. Listening to you, I can actually hear your father's voice. I'd like to invite up Barry's friend, Bernie Shapiro. I apologize if it's Shapiro. Okay. Bernie Shapiro. That's join us.
It was in the middle years of the 1970s that Barry Adler chose to uproot his family from their home in central Jersey and move to Cherry Hill. He came to Cherry Hill High School East as chair of the Social Studies Department. He was joining a leadership team that was on a mission. It was a mission to erase a stain that had been inflicted upon us by an area newspaper that had referred to Cherry Hill High School East as the Black Hole of Calcutta, because we were overcrowded, very overcrowded, and had some serious issues. Barry was a people person. He was so very successful from the beginning and so popular, such a major contributor to our team, that it was only a few short years later that he was promoted to an assistant principalship. Barry had a unique ability to bring people together and solve difficult problems. It had always bothered me that we were only able to produce about a half a dozen or less national merit semifinalists. I had left Cherry Hill and was sitting at my desk in Haddon Township when a booklet arrived listing all of the merit semifinalists in all of the high schools in the state of New Jersey. I opened the booklet to the page on which the Cherry Hill High School East semifinalists were listed, and I proceeded to count them. The number exceeded 20, and a tear filled my eye as the images of the people who were responsible for the change crossed my mind. Some of you are here today, and one of the most prominent images was that of Barry Adler. So Cherry Hill High School East could take its place among the its rightful place among the elite academic institutions in the state of New Jersey. Barry's image was central to that effort. However, I should like to focus on Barry the person rather than that of Barry the educator. Barry and I became friends. We took our sons to baseball games. Muriel and Barry shared their family celebrations with us, and we with them. He was a family man through and through. He was a loyal husband to Muriel, the love of his life. He was a devoted and proud father to Mark and Glenn. And he was a caring and doting grandfather to Leon, Ben, and Jacob. It is impossible to count the number of people that Barry touched in his life. Thousands of men and women, many of whom had never heard the name Barry Adler, walked through the halls of the many schools in which Barry worked. All of them benefited from an educational environment enriched because Barry worked there. If the productivity of our lives can be measured by the fact that we leave this little corner of the world in which we inhabit better off than we inherited, Barry lived a superbly productive life indeed. So rest in peace, Barry, my friend. You have earned it.
I'd like to invite another friend of Barry's, Dr. John Obriza, to join us.
In September of 1976, Barry Adler came to Cherry Hill High School East to teach history and to serve, as Bernie has indicated, as the chairman of the history department. During the third week of school, he came to my classroom in B Wing and introduced himself to me. He had learned from his students in honors history that we shared, or he shared, my students in English. Although he was a teacher with 10 years of experience in 2 North Jersey districts, he wanted to learn about student culture and expectations in Cherry Hill. This casual encounter led to a friendship which evolved over the years. For Barry, being a teacher meant more than having a class schedule, simply having a class schedule and class rosters. For him, the school meant more than mere order and discipline. For him, school was a rich environment for disciplined study, for building friendships, for exploring art, music, drama, and for service to others within the school community and the district. Regardless of his title and position, Barry's calling as a teacher was always part of his work. After his service to East, he served consecutively at 3 schools within the district: Payne, Carusi, and Knight. In addition to his assignments as a teacher and subsequently as an administrator, Barry had other involvements in the district. He worked with CHASA, the Administrators Association, as a contract negotiator and as a liaison team member. For over 25 years, he taught in the teacher preparation program at Rutgers Camden. Within the scope of his duties as an administrator, he looked to see opportunities to help teachers and support staff alike, particularly in times of need. Just as he looked over the care of his family at home, he did so for the school family. Indeed, these were his two sacred trusts. For all who knew him and worked with him, it can be said he was a man for all seasons and a man for others. So, after I wrote this brief account, which I think gets to the character of my friend Barry, my wife discovered my son's Carusi yearbook from 1996. And at this point, I thought, with her counsel, that it would be good for you, for everyone, to hear Barry's words in real time. At the beginning of the yearbook, he writes an address to his students. What we've heard here now can be something actual, something present in Barry's very own words. So if you would consider this as Barry's lesson for all. In the course, he writes to his students, in the course of your academic career and lifetime, your 2 years at Carusi will be only a brief interval. As you look back years from now, it will be a time of significant importance. You will mature from elementary school students into adolescence. Your interests and skills will be expanded and enriched by skilled, committed teachers. Lifelong friends and personal relationships will be established. Musical, athletic, and creative talents will be nurtured and refined. Memorable teachers, administrators, and support staff will often bring a smile to your face as you remember a special moment. Fun times like Spirit Week will always bring fond memories. While your adventures here last only 2 years, all of Carusi's experiences will be as special to each of you. Everyone will have different memories that collectively will make up a rich mosaic. In the immediate future, as you move on to high school, your Carusi Foundation will provide the basis for more advanced learning and further enrichment. Many of you will return to us for another year of learning mixed with additional leadership responsibilities. In time, all of you will move on to advanced educational experiences, occupations, professions, and lifetime endeavors. However, wherever you go, whatever your role in life, Carusi will always be a part of your past, just as you will always be a part of Carusi. We very much appreciate your many contributions to our school. We will, of course, miss you. Thank you. Good luck in the future. And I would add to that, and may God bless. May God bless Barry and all of the students he served. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Barry's grandson, Leon, to join us.
Hi everyone. To start, I would like to thank you all for coming and being here with us today. Most of you knew my Saba as a friend, mentor, colleague, or teacher. He loved, and was beloved by those he worked with, those he worked for, and those he taught. I want to now take this time, though, to reflect on the type of family man my Saba was, and especially the role he played in my life, as well as in my life as being the best grandfather he could to my brothers and I. My Saba's name was always popular to throw around at school, and it would sometimes feel like I might be getting some special treatment from teachers, as he was usually a celebrity on the grounds of any Cherry Hill public school. But again, beyond his popularity within the district, that made it seem like I was getting some sort of special treatment. He always showed how much he loved being a grandfather, as he was sure to be there for every sporting event, every concert, and every show he could get to. He was proud to watch Ben follow in our dad's footsteps in becoming a basketball player for Cherry Hill East. He was always interested in what was happening in mine and my brother's lives, always checking in on how school was going and joking that he had received a call from so-and-so administrator or dean that we were failing a class. But the thing I loved to do more than anything was our two set annual trips to the mall and for lunch. One for back to school shopping, like our dad had mentioned, for new backpacks, and once a year for our Hanukkah shopping spree. And we would always get lunch at either Sal's or Red Robin afterwards. Now, one memory I will never forget is the way my Saba always served himself mac and cheese. It was always something everyone at the dinner table would take notice of and make a little bit of fun of, because he would take a big spoon of mac and cheese and just start banging it against the plate. We were all so surprised how that plate didn't break. However, I will say, it was quite efficient, as he always got every last bit of mac. I will always remember our baseball catches in the front yard of 123 Thornwood. The games he taught us to play that he had once played himself when he was younger. And the way we would just sit for hours, catching up, watching sports, talking about the news. I'll miss you, Saba, but I know you'll be watching over us.
Shadows falling and I'm running out of breath. Keep me in your heart for a while. If I leave you, it doesn't mean I love you any less. Keep me in your heart for a while. When you get up in the morning and you see that crazy sun, keep me in your heart for a while. There's a train leaving nightly called when all is said and done. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sometimes when you're doing simple things around the house, Maybe you'll think of me and smile. You know I'm tied to you like the buttons on your blouse. Keep me in your heart for a while. Hold me in your thoughts. Take me to dreams. Touch me as I fall into view. When the winter comes, keep the fires lit, and I will be right next to you. Engine drivers headed north to Pleasant Stream. Keep me in your heart for a while. These wheels keep turning, but they're running out of steam. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la, la-la-la-la-la-la-lo. Keep me in your heart for a while. Sha-la-la-la, la-la-la-la-la-la-lo. Keep me in your heart for a while. Keep me in your heart for a while. Our rabbis taught that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasized that the crown of a good name excels them all. The book of Ecclesiastes says, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. A good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, even life passes away, but a good name lives forever. It is this view that the Talmud teaches. Monuments need not be erected for the righteous. Their deeds are their memorials. They will be remembered and revered for the kindness they have shown and for the love they have given. They are shining examples of what it means to be a mensch. We continue with the memorial chant, the Almale Rachamim. I invite you please to rise. Almale Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Ametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanafei Ashchina, Im Kirashim Utehorim, Kizor Arakia, Mazhirim, Et Nishmat, Beryl David, Ben Rachman, Lazar V'Zelda, Shehalach Le'olamo, Ba'al HaRachamim, Yastirehu B'Seter Knafav, Le'olamim, V'yitzror b'yitzror Achayim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our loved one, Barry, who has entered eternity. Grant him clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold him in the embrace of your wings. Secure him, his soul in eternity. Adonai, he is yours. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. Interment will follow our chapel service this morning at Locust Wood Cemetery, where Kaddish will be recited.
May we have the pallbearers, please. And we would ask if you would all rise once more, please. Place your hand across the chest, walk alongside, please.
למען שמו גם כי אלך בגצל מוות לא יראה כי אתה
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll ask if everyone could kindly just take seats for just a moment, please. Thank you.